Okay, thank you, Professor Phatak, and welcome back, everybody. Today is the last live interaction session for this workshop, and of course, there are a lot of things that uh, you know that's that one can talk about, that one can explain about, but given the limited duration of the format of this workshop, we have been trying to sort of highlight the main things, and once again appealing to you. I repeat this appeal every day. uh, Please go and look up the material that we have made available. uh, Going through that material, going through the video, there is really the only way to learn, how we go about teaching in the most effective way in online setting. So, what I will discuss today. So, let me briefly mention what my plan today is. Uh, so, yes, I will first, you know, try to complete something, or rather, put a. Yesterday, if you remember that, I did mention about this analogy about how we use ICT for online education in response to the challenge that was thrown to us by the pandemic, and how ICT was used to tackle a similar problem in the healthcare sector. I mentioned this in a bit hurried, impromptu manner yesterday. Uh, what I want to start off today is, before we go into the main topic of today's discussion, which is about assessments, I want to show you what I was talking about, so that you can clearly see how problems that are actually very difficult to solve in a face-to-face setting can actually be solved much better in an online setting. And so the purpose of using online resources is not necessarily to replicate the face-to-face setting, but to make the best use of the resources and the all the different features that online settings provide us. So I'm going to share my screen, I guess. So I'll just spend 5 minutes sort of elaborating more on what I talked about yesterday, using some very nice information graphics that is already available, uh, so that you understand very clearly that using the online medium often can provide us more opportunities.
Sir, this feature is not available to me right now. Sir, Professor Patak, you can just make Professor Supratik as a co-host.
Professor Supratik, we can see your screen, but you are not audible because you are muted.
I see. I'm sorry. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm saying that I'm not sure if I did enough justice to this in my impromptu outburst yesterday about this program, but I think I would like to sort of show it today. I mean, this was really an amazing use of ICT technology, using online medium to solve a problem that has eluded a proper solution in a face-to-face setting. So this thing is called 99 dots. Dots is the TB, tuberculosis treatment regime that is recommended by WHO, and it is basically a sequence of medicines that have to be taken in a very strict specified schedule over a period of several months. I think 4 months or 6 months or something like that. And if one goes through that entire sequence of medicines, then there's a very, very high chance that you're freed of tuberculosis. Now, so this is a website, 99dots.org, and just to show that this is actually a live website. I mean, this TB management is actually happening. I mean, if you click on this link, it actually takes you to something from Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So this is actually being used in the country today. But I will come back to what and this is not only being used in India, it's being used abroad as well. It was developed in India, it's being used abroad as well. Uh, but what I want to show you is the solution. I mean, I hope you can see my screen. Let me increase the font size. So the solution that was used, and remember, the problem here was that there were a large number of tuberculosis patients who were being given medicines by doctors, primary health center workers, the government, several programs. They were actually being given medicines, the full entire sequence of medicines that they need to take, and all that they were required to do, all the patients were required to do, was to take these medicines in a particular sequence, which was also explained to them using all kinds of YouTube videos, WhatsApp videos, text, multilingual flyers, all of these. And yet there was a very large fraction of patients who would not follow this treatment regime. They would do this for a few weeks and then they would just drop out. They would not take the medicines as scheduled. As a result, they would not get cured of tuberculosis. So the parallel that I want to draw for the online education setting is that we as instructors, we are creating a lot of material, we are creating assessment mechanisms, quizzes, all of these, and we are putting it out for our students to make use of these things. And the usual complaint that we receive from a lot of teachers, and as teachers ourselves, we also feel frustrated sometimes at this, that a lot of students are just not using this. They're not going through the material, they're not maybe taking the quizzes, they're not submitting their assignments, they're just taking it easy. So that's the kind of similarity that I want to draw, that one is in a healthcare setting, one is in an educational setting. The in one case, the doctors, the government, the health professionals, they were providing everything that is needed. In the other case, the teachers, we as instructors, are providing everything that is needed to the students. And then in the healthcare setting, the patients were not following up with this regime that they needed to follow for eradicating tuberculosis from their bodies. And in our case, I guess we are complaining that students are not doing exactly what they're supposed to do, the way we are asking them to do things, and as a result they're not benefiting from the learning experience. And look at the innovative solution that they came up with, right? So what is the solution? So the solution is, if you can read here, it says it is simple, aims to be low cost and accessible by all patients. And I guess that's what we need even for education. We need simple solutions, low cost solutions, accessible by all students. So what was the solution? In this case, the patient medication was packaged in custom secondary envelopes, which add dosage instruction and a series of hidden numbers. So I'll just show you what it means, right? So this is the medication. This red thing is the actual tablets, and this was actually put inside this, this white thing that you see here is a kind of additional envelope, and this medicine is put inside this additional envelope and then given to the patients. And what is the special property of this additional envelope? So every time, each time a patient takes a dose of medication, a hidden number is revealed, which is unpredictable to the patient. So on this envelope, there is this arrow which says that you have to start here, then take this medicine, then take this medicine, then take this medicine, and so on. And then there are these, phone call icons over here reminding the patient that they also need to make a phone call. So every day, as the patient takes a dose of medication, a hidden number is revealed, which the patient cannot predict otherwise. Okay, so the patient took out two medicines, so two numbers will get revealed, and this revealed number then completes a phone number, but the first part of the number is printed on the front side of the envelope, and the last part of the number is what comes up, as the medicine is taken out, and the patient then makes a free call to the completed phone number. Okay, it's a toll-free number. The patient makes a free call, and as a result, this is the kind of analytics that people were able to obtain. I mean, of course, this is from a a test case. This is not the real thing. We cannot show the real data here. It is kind of patient data, but this is the kind of things that they were able to obtain, that a particular patient has been taking the medicines, at least has been opening that blister pack, and taking the medicine in his or her hands, and hopefully therefore also consuming it for, very well for whatever 21 days over here. there is this person who was probably supposed to take two medicines, and on this particular day none of those medicines got taken. On the other day one of the medicines got taken. And these kinds of analytics get generated. And of course, if you see a large band of red over here for a particular patient, you know that the patient has fallen off the radar screen, is not following up with the instruction. And then you and then these healthcare professionals effectively went and followed up with that patient, sometimes even visiting them, calling them over phone, making WhatsApp calls, saying that you really need to take your medicines, we know that you have not been taking your medicines. And then again, a lot of them come back into the compliance regime. So you see, it's a very simple solution, and it actually gives a very good overview of who's following the treatment regime and who's not. Some people may have missed it 1 or 2 days, that can happen, but then they sort of followed it up after that, so they're doing fine. There's nothing to be worried about them. But if there are large patches of yellow or large patches of red or pink or whatever the color is over here, then that's reason to be worried about. And you can actually find out who's this person who's not following up, and sort of get in touch with that person. And that's exactly what they did. And this has resulted in a remarkable increase in compliance with the treatment regime, and there's been significant improvement in the compliance because of this. So you see, this is something that would have been very, very hard to do face to face. You can't go and remind everybody face to face that you need to take today's medicine. But with this very simple technique, they actually managed to do track down people who are not following uh, the treatment regime very, very nicely. And so, coming back to what we want to discuss is that in the education setting, I think giving, in a normal face-to-face setting, sometimes we say, okay, there are whatever, maybe quizzes at the end of the week, or maybe at the end of the month there is an exam, and then there are these periodic assessments and whatever, half yearly, annual, semester exams, this, that. And of course, these are significant chunks where we're going to talk about the different kinds of assessments that we typically do with this. But what we can also do, and this is a suggestion for all of you to consider, is maybe after each lesson, maybe within a lesson a couple of times, just give a couple of simple questions. The questions don't have to be very brain teasing questions, a few simple questions. But these questions can be answered only after they have seen or they have done what you have asked them to do or see. And if you just and ask them to whatever, fill it up on a Google form or something, and if you just see the statistics, if you just see who has been answering and who has not been answering, it will be fairly easy for you to figure out, hopefully, which students are falling off the radar screen and which students are probably having bad patches in between, they're coming on and off, and which students are doing perfectly well. So this is kind of like a simple monitoring mechanism. The purpose of the little quiz you're giving is not to understand how deep their knowledge is, but to understand whether they're doing what they're supposed to do. Have they seen a little video? Have they read a little PDF that you've put up? Have they sort of read maybe a chapter from the textbook that you asked them to read? So those questions are meant to be those. In the context of programming, maybe you can give very simple questions. I think Professor Phatak had used some of those questions for group 3, right? When you're talking about how to name variables, you just give 3 kinds of variable names, one of which is clearly not allowed, and you just ask them to say that which of these is the right one. And we're going to come back to this question, that sometimes this criticism comes that, well, when we are assessing in this online mechanism, in this online mode, how do we know students are not adopting unfair means? How do we know that they're not asking somebody else to sort of help them with the answers? And yes, this is a difficult problem to address, but the kinds of questions that we are asking you to put in for this kind of monitoring are not deep questions, are not hard questions. These are questions that they can themselves figure out if they just see the little video, or if they just read the little PDF, or if they go through the chapter of the book that you've asked them to do. And this is going to come periodically, maybe in every lesson, so that finding somebody to help them out in every lesson may be difficult. and even if that person is sort of getting helped, effectively, it's like saying that somebody didn't look up the video about how variables need to be named, but then in order to answer that little question about which variable was wrongly named, they're asking somebody, and of course when that little discussion is happening between that somebody and that student, the student actually gets to know what is the right way of naming a variable and what is the not the right way of naming a variable. So the important point here is these are sort of micro quizzes, these are micro assessments, not for understanding how much the student has gained deep knowledge, but just for testing whether the student has done what they were supposed to do. And these are done at a very fine granularity, uh, very frequently, so that you can get this, at a high frequency, you can get this data. And your purpose in using this data is not to use it for any grading purpose, or you can assign a very low percentage score to it, but it is more to track which students are falling off the screen. So yes, this requires a little bit of effort for inserting those simple questions after every lesson and then looking at the statistics. But I think this is well worth it. I mean, as I'm showing you that this has actually helped solve problems in the healthcare sector, which had completely uh, eluded solutions otherwise. Okay. What I'll do is I'll come back. So this was kind of continuing uh, the analogy that I gave yesterday, hopefully to drive home the point that uh, it is possible to use the online medium to do things that are very difficult to do in a normal face-to-face setting, and we should just try to leverage those things. Okay. Yeah, are there any quick questions on this? If not, yeah, maybe I'll just wait for a couple of minutes to see if somebody raises a hand. Uh, if not, we will.
You may want to stop showing your sharing your screen so that there will be larger space on screen.
Yeah. Okay. Don't see anybody having raised a hand, although I did notice a couple of posts on the chat window. Uh, Somebody is saying, "What are we learning? I don't have any clue." Uh, there are some issues, some concerns about peer assessment. Okay, we'll come to those later. Okay, so there are some concerns about peer assessment. We'll come to those things later. I guess there is, well, somebody has said that I believe one of the participants has unfairly graded in the peer assessment.
May I intervene, Professor?
Yeah, sure.
You see, in fact, this, by the way, we have observed in all the time that we have conducted peer assessment, even with 2,000 participants, there is always some confusion. That is the reason why this peer assessment is not a graded assessment. What you have attempted to do is a practice assessment. But you can see that everybody has to actually diligently apply its mind both while submission and while grading. If this does not happen, then everybody or many others suffer in the group. So I sympathize with all of you, and I can see the frustration that is visible in the comments. But please note that this was only a practice assignment. The real assignment, which is now you will have to do, this time you will have to be very careful. So this time you will get instructions and do it exactly accordingly. There will be no problem. I assure you that all of us are learning in the process, and we have to actually make efforts to ensure that we follow both letter and spirit of the instructions that are given. Thank you.
So we are going to talk a little bit about peer assessment also. So it has its pros and cons, and as Professor Phatak said, all that has happened so far is not going to go into your grade, but it is unfortunate that some participants have unfairly done the peer assessment. But I would request everybody not to be demotivated by it, because this doesn't contribute to your grade, and it just so it just sort of drives home the point that sometimes, despite the best of intentions from some section of the participants, maybe some other smaller section of the participants actually do things which hurt everybody. So I think this is, it's not something that doesn't happen in other areas, other walks of life. It happens in all walks of life. In this particular case, please don't worry, this doesn't contribute to your grading. But I guess it's hopefully, something that tells you what happens. So for example, if you were to try to do peer assessment in your class, I mean, you have to take that call yourself based on the situation in your class. These are similar things that can happen, and what do we do to address those? Yeah, so I think those are the kinds of questions that we, I mean, definitely when we are hearing so many complaints, it is clear that somebody who's doing peer assessment is not doing it right. And from the instructor's side, it's actually not very difficult to find out who is it that is not doing right. And then, of course, that person, can be contacted, can be made to explain, and all of that thing can be done. But let us continue with, so we'll come back to peer assessment as part of our discussion on assessments. There is a small part on that, but let us come back to what we were trying to discuss. Okay, so once again, I will share my screen. So we are talking about assessments, something that we are also doing for this workshop. And, so as you can see here, it is, what is needed is very clear instructions on what students are expected to do, in what format and so on. And this is because online students can't come and talk to you after class and get these clarifications, which often happens when we have face-to-face interactions. Okay. uh, Answer assessment related queries promptly. So as we are seeing on the chat window, there are queries, concerns about the assessment, and these need to be addressed promptly. Otherwise they can become hurdles for students to progress with the course. And constructive feedback on submissions. So to an extent, all of these are not really unique to online assessment. They're true even otherwise, except that for some of them the urgency is even more in an online setting. Particularly, this providing clear instructions on what they're supposed to do. So we had done this breakout room exercise, I think a few sessions back, where we had asked you to design a programming assignment, where we had given the high level sort of contours of what that assignment should do. And we did see some of you came up with very clear instructions. For some of you, the instructions were not so clear. But in an online setting, this becomes even more important. Okay, so typically in an online setting, actually not just in an online setting, even otherwise, there are two reasons why we want to do assessment. Okay, one is to analyze the progress of the students, to improve their learning and teaching, to sort of get them more engaged. And the other is for the students to demonstrate how much knowledge and skill they have achieved. Okay. So typically the first one is called formative assessment and the second one is called summative assessment. And both of them have their roles. Okay. The kind of micro quizzes that I was talking about can be viewed as formative assessments, and then the kind of programming assignment or learning by doing that we have been talking about, activities, those can be thought of as we are asking students to demonstrate how much knowledge or skill they've achieved. In an online setting, particularly when not all students are always able to connect, I think this formative assessment is very important, and also to help you to track the progress of students, which students are tuned in and which students have already tuned out. And of course, I'm sure by this time, after 9 months of the lockdown, we know that there are some formats that can be used: multiple choice questions, short answer questions, open-ended questions, file submissions, collaborative activities, and so on. So what we are going to do is, I have roughly half an hour, because at 4:30 we have one of our colleagues who will come and give a demonstration. So what I'll do is, so this is asking us to look at roughly 7 minutes. We won't go through that entire 7 minutes, but I want you to look at a few things where whatever we have learned earlier, remember the learning dialogues, the learning by doing, learning by interactions, learning by providing different trajectories, what we'll see is that we can actually embed assessments in each one of them. And we can sort of do our evaluation of how the student is progressing through each one of them. So let us go to this video by Professor Sahana Murthy, who's an expert in online. Uh,
2 minutes again and reflect on the purpose of assessment. As instructors, one goal of conducting assessment is for students to practice their skills and apply their knowledge so that we can continuously analyze their progress, and this can be used to improve learning as well as improve teaching. Such assessment is ongoing and frequent.
So yeah, I'll just pause here, and I think this point that it has to be frequent is important, because otherwise you will not be able to track the progress. Okay, this cannot be once at the end of the month or something. Okay, let's continue.
And a key element of such assessment is feedback to the learner and feedback to the teacher that helps them improve this teaching and learning process. Assessment for such a purpose is called assessment for learning or formative assessment. Another reason we do assessment as instructors is so that students can demonstrate the achievement of their knowledge and skills. Such assessments describe what a student is able to do and what we value in a course. Assessment for such a purpose is called assessment of learning or summative assessment. Let us now see how the elements of an LCM MOOC can be used for formative as well as summative assessment. Let us first consider LEDs or learning dialogues. LEDs contain the content of the topic. This interaction happens.
So once again, I'll pause here, and I will just show short clippings from this video by Professor Sahana Murthy, where all the 4 things that we have discussed earlier, learning dialogues, learning by doing, learner experience interactions, and learner experience trajectories. This is just saying that we can actually embed assessment in each one of these, so we don't need to do it separately. Okay, so let us go ahead with.
Happens via one or more reflection spots in each LED, wherein learners express their thinking, express their prior conceptions, articulate their reasoning, get opportunity to do micro practice, and reflect upon their own actions. Then the instructor gives collective feedback to the various possible responses related to the reflection spot question. Thus, LEDs via the embedded reflection spot activity can be used for formative assessment.
So once again, this is, I think, an excellent way to track the progress of your students. Every learning dialogue should have a reflection spot, and if you ask them to respond to it through, let us say, a Google form, we'll discuss the possible options also. This can be used for formative assessment and also for tracking the progress.
Let us now focus on Lbds or learning by doing. Learning by doing is a formative assessment activity. Feedback is a key component of formative assessment. When learners answer an Lbd activity, they get customized and rapid feedback on their response that guides them to improve their learning. Can Lbds be used for summative assessment too? At its core, an Lbd activity contains a question designed by an instructor, which the learners answer in a variety of ways. There is also a mechanism for checking and giving feedback to learners' responses. Thus, an Lbd activity can be used as summative assessment.
Okay, so once again, the point to note here is that an LED is a learning dialogue, is each individual student is responding very frequently. Perhaps even in every LED, there might be 1 or 2 questions to answer. LBDs are more like learning by doing, that after maybe a few topics, after a few LEDs have been done, you want to give this. So this is less frequent. But here you can ask questions which require more of application of what they learned rather than just recalling of what they learned, which can be through the learning dialogue, reflection spot quizzes. And here, even this learning by doing activities could also be done in groups. So for example, if you're talking about programming, you can group two students together and say that, okay, together they should do something. Whereas the LED reflection spot should be from each individual student more frequently. Okay.
What are possible formats of LBDs? One common format is a multiple choice question. A learner responds to the various choices of the question, and the system provides automatic feedback on each choice. The feedback to LBDs in an LCM MOOC are customized and detailed. They go beyond telling the learner whether he or she was correct or wrong. In fact, they help the learner understand the reason for why their answer might have been wrong and how they could have improved. However, many of you may be wondering now that multiple choice questions are not enough. You may want to go beyond and include longer questions such as problems, design activities, reasoning questions, and so on. LBDs, in fact, can go beyond multiple choice questions and can include longer complex questions. Now, the next thing you may be wondering is about the feasibility of longer questions and especially about assessing such longer questions in large, massive MOOCs. So let us see how this can be done. One recommended technique is to provide.
So we are talking about peer assessment, about which we have received enough critique and concern on the chat window. But let us go through this. And I think this business of rubrics is, I think, very, very important. This can be used with peer assessment, without peer assessment. And we will hopefully see a live demonstration of this today from one of our colleagues at 4:30. But let us, I mean, we did provide rubrics for even for the peer assessment of your submitted assignment. Looks like for some of you it worked, for some of you it didn't work. But let us go through this, and then we can try to see that, how we can use this in ways that doesn't have the problems that we are seeing now, in the peer reviewed assignment.
By peer assessment with rubrics, that is, rubrics that contain detailed criteria for various levels of performance to the question. Many MOOC technology platforms have functionalities for peer assessment as well as to provide grading using rubrics. Let's now move on to LXI, learning experience interaction, whose purpose is to cultivate peer learning by a focused discussion.
So I'll stop here. We won't go through the entire thing with the request that all of you please go through it. And I think Professor Sahana has explained very nicely how through the learner experience interactions and learner experience trajectories also we can do assessment. I just want to point out a couple of things here that when you are trying to embed your assessment within these four activities, right? Learning dialogues, learning by doing, the learner experience interactions, which are like discussion forums, and the trajectories where you're giving additional resources for students to follow. It is important to sort of keep in mind what is the purpose of our assessment, right? Some of these assessments are just to track progress. Some of these assessments are to really understand how much the student has understood and is able to apply their skills. Some of these are probably a mix of the two, that as long as they have sort of gone through what was taught to them, what was provided to them, they can perhaps answer part of it, maybe part of a question, and for the other part, maybe they won't be able to answer until they're thinking beyond that. So whenever we set a quiz or an assessment, I think it's very important to have at the back of our mind, what is it that we are trying to assess? Are we trying to assess the student staying in, the student's engagement with the course, where the student is doing what we are asking him or her to do? Or are we trying to assess whether the student is really able to think beyond what the learning dialogues are talking about. Okay. So the purpose of the assessment, I think, is very important, because that will drive the kind of questions. And I mean, you do not want to give very deep brain teasers just to track progress of students, because even if a student is progressing as you want him or her to, looking at the videos, trying to read up the slides, whatever, if he or she is unable to answer those brain teasers, then he or she would feel demotivated, that I put in all my effort and still I'm unable to answer those. So the purpose is important. As far as peer assessment goes, what Professor Sahanamurthy just said in this video is that this is really sort of one of the effective ways to do assessment in very large, MOOCs, massively open online classes. Uh, in your setting where you're teaching a class of maybe 50, 60 students, or maybe 100 students, it may or may not be effective. And as I said, uh, what we are seeing here happening, that somebody is not following the rubrics to do peer assessment, ending up demotivating others, can very well happen with students who may not be so experienced. So we are not recommending or suggesting that you use peer assessment in your classes necessarily. So it's a call that you have to take. And if you think for something, maybe for something which is lightweight, peer assessment can be done, well and good. If you think that's absolutely a no-no given the context in your class, because I believe none of your class sizes are going to grow as go into thousands or something. And so peer assessment is really very effective when you have very large class sizes. But in your context, it may or may not be useful. But I think it's important to know the principle, the philosophy behind it. And the idea of rubrics is, of course, very, very useful, even if you're not doing peer assessment. And we will see that. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to sort of walk you through some of the technology tools, and also, based on our limited experience, I guess provide some recommendations. And it's not necessary that you follow these tools or use these tools. It can be done otherwise also. But at least from the best practices that we have seen, so the first thing here is what is called Moodle. So if there is anybody here who is using Moodle for your classes, it will be very good to hear from you. Maybe at the end of this session when I ask for comments from you. But Moodle is basically a free software. This is an extremely, extremely robust and useful piece of software, uh, meant for, it's a learning management system. And the assessment mechanisms that Moodle provides are really quite advanced and also user friendly, both for instructors and for students. So, if it is feasible, I know a lot of participants here are computer teachers. So, you can evaluate the feasibility of this in your own setting. That if you can set up a Moodle server, the software is available for free. You have to set up a server which is running this, this Moodle service, and you have to make sure that server is available. It can kind of take the load that your school or your college students may present to the server. But if this can be done, I think this is actually a very, very, very good solution. So not only does it provide a learning management system where you can, it provides discussion forums, it provides ways to host your videos, it provides ways to host other kinds of media, and in addition, it provides a very rich set of assessment mechanisms. So just to give you an example, and once again, I'm not sure how much of this we'll be able to go through individually. There are videos available here, and there are also slides available here, which are guidelines for ways of conducting assessment using the various features of Moodle. But I'd just like to sort of point out a few things that, for example, may be useful in the setting that you are in. So for example, we can of course set up multiple choice quizzes. That's not a problem. We can also set up open-ended questions. We can mix and match them in the same quiz. We can have conditional things that if somebody is able to answer something, only then they will be able to go to this. Otherwise, they will be taken to another question. And it also provides this very nice feature, which is quite useful for resource constrained students, that you can set your questions, and Moodle can randomize it completely, so that maybe you have set 20 questions, and for student 1, question number 20 shows up first, and then question 13 and question 7. For student 2, question 1 shows up first, and then question 10 and question 5, so that if uh, if students are trying to adopt unfair means, like just saying, okay, here is the sequence of answers, then that will not work. So Moodle does provide you the facility to randomize, but it also provides this very nice facility which says that, which allows you to do the following. So suppose you want to conduct an examination for your course. It could be a programming assignment, it could be whatever other subject assignment. uh, so you want to conduct a quiz, and let us say you have decided that it is going to be a 1 hour quiz. So students will get exactly 1 hour to answer that quiz. And you announce the starting time at, let us say, 9 a.m. So everybody is supposed to connect at 9 a.m. and they're supposed to take this quiz until 10 a.m. But I mean, students are in different kinds of settings right now. So some may have a good network connection, some may encounter a power outage at 9 a.m. Some may just whatever, run out of network bandwidth, uh, you know just around the time the exam was supposed to start. So although you have set the exam for 1 hour and you have said 9 to 10 a.m. is the exam duration, it is perfectly possible that some of your students, particularly the resource constrained students, may not be able to sign in exactly at 9. Now, if somebody signs in 5 minutes later or 10 minutes later because of some genuine problems that they had, it is kind of unfair for the exam to be stopped for that person at 10 a.m. because that person is not getting the full 1 hour that you had meant for this exam, and it was for no fault of that student, right? So Moodle provides this very nice feature where you can say that, well, I want to conduct a 1 hour examination. The starting time is 9 a.m. and students can start anywhere between 9 to 9:30. Now, what this means is that if a student starts at 9, the exam that that student is taking will actually end at 10. After 10, Moodle will not allow that student to respond to that exam. But if a student starts at 9:07, then for that student, the exam will continue until 10:07. And if a student starts at maybe 9:10, so you have to say how long are you willing to allow students to join because of transient problems that they might have. You can say, well, up to 10 minutes I'll allow, or up to 15 minutes I'll allow. Then within that window, Moodle will allow students to join to take the exam. And of course, they're getting a randomized set of questions, so they're not seeing the same questions that others may have seen in the same order. And Moodle will allow that student to continue for 1 hour. So basically, you have a window when students can start taking the exam, but each student gets exactly 1 hour to take the exam. But the real window when the exam is ending is also not just one time point, but it is staggered based on when students started. Right. So this actually turns out to be quite useful for maybe the few resource-starved students who cannot join at a particular time synchronously for very genuine reasons. Uh, Moodle has things like which allows you to do collaborative activities. This is, for example, very, very useful if you want to have things like interactions. If you want to have groups working on some things, you can form these groups within Moodle and people can collaborate on those things. uh, you can have open-ended questions and you can give rubrics for grading those open-ended questions. So we will see a demonstration of rubrics today, and of course, file submission. So this is really a very, very powerful system. This is used the world over. And if you can set it up in your system, most of your computer teachers, it's not too much of an effort setting it up. I mean, the instructions and everything are also very clearly given. Uh, but if you can set it up, I think this will provide you, at least if not for anything, for doing assessments, this will provide you probably one of the most versatile platforms which is available free of cost today. Okay, and here there are some guidelines. For example, you can have online examinations with a mix of all of these. MCQs, numerical answers, fill in the blanks. All of these can be put together. You can, even have. You can provide diagrams, you can provide videos, you can provide audios as part of the quiz. So you can say, okay, here is a diagram, you can upload an image, and based on that diagram you can ask some questions, all of this. Okay, now if Moodle doesn't work for you, Google Suite, I believe, is already being used by a lot of you. So Google Suite also allows a very rich set of evaluation, but as I said, using Moodle, you actually get more facilities, more controls over how to conduct your assessments. And but using Google Forms also, you can do multiple choice quiz, open-ended questions. Uh, and Google Jamboard is there, which you can use for collaborative activities when you're doing learning based discussions, uh, l- right, learning by doing, learning based interactions, and of course file submissions are also possible. So uh, once again, there are some videos that we have pointed to. For example, you can use self-assessment rubric in Google Forms also. Uh, you can assess completion of assignment in Google Forms also. But I think Moodle provides a little bit more control to you as an instructor about how you want to conduct your exam. Now, what I want to do here is I also want to introduce you to this particular thing. I did mention about this, right? I think at the beginning in the first interaction or second interaction. So there is something that has been homegrown here by two of our colleagues actually, Professor Bhaskar and Professor Kameshwari, uh, and this is called SAFE. And Professor Bhaskar has kindly agreed to come and give us a talk and demonstration of the features of SAFE today at 4:30. So we will hear it directly from him. I mean, he's the creator. He and Professor Kameshwari are the creator of this, you know, this tool, and this is being used at several schools and colleges as we speak. Uh, what I would request all of you before, I mean, Professor Bhaskar has requested me to convey this to you, that there is a particular website that I'm going to show now. Actually, probably we don't even need to go to a website. If you go to, if you have a smartphone, either an Android or an iOS smartphone, if you go to Google Play Store, and if you just type, so let me show it here. So let's go to Google Play Store. I mean, if you do this on your mobile phone, okay, and then if you type safe IITB, uh, you will see that this shows up there. Okay, so if you do this on your mobile, in the next few minutes, because Professor Bhaskar has said that really to understand how things are done, it would be best if as many of you can install this little app on your mobile phones. And this is available not only in for Android and Google Play Store, it's also available in the Apple App Store. So if you're using an iPhone running iOS, you can go to the Apple App Store, and there again you can type in safe IITB. Okay, and it shows up here. The very first link, uh, not this safe guava, which is also generated by Professor Bhaskar's group, but the safe IITB is what, if you could just download on your mobile phones, and so that when Professor Bhaskar tries to demonstrate it, you can see it for yourself. Now, why am I talking about this in this course? I mean, am I trying to sort of promote IITB things? It's not that. There are other things that are also available here, but this is something that has been, I mean, there's been, very nice feedback about this. And because this is, sort of homegrown, I mean, this is developed here at IIT Bombay. I mean, if there is a need for customizing it in a particular way for maybe your application, we can request Professor Bhaskar and Professor Kameshwari, and depending on how tightly their you know their schedule of support for SAFE is currently. For example, we use SAFE even at IIT Bombay for conducting a lot of examinations, and SAFE provides a lot of other features. So, for example, there's one feature I think Bhaskar is going to talk about, uh, which once again is very useful in resource constrained situations. Remember, our purpose of designing an assessment is not really to check whether somebody has a lot of resources at the time that we want them to take an exam or a quiz or something, right? Our purpose of doing an assessment is really to either figure out whether they're progressing or to see whether they can apply the knowledge and skills that they have acquired. And so we want to make, ideally, we should try to make uh, the assessment as independent as independent of this resource availability dimension as much as possible. So somebody who's resource constrained and somebody who has a lot of resources should sort of be on the same platform, should be on the same footing when we are trying to assess them. And sometimes this is not possible when you use some of the other tools. So for example, I think if you use Google Forms, you can, from the best that I know, I think you can just start the exam at a particular time and you can end it at a particular time. You cannot sort of accommodate that somebody was not uh, didn't have access to the network at that particular time. Of course, Moodle allows that, but Moodle still needs a network connection while the exam is going on. Now what this safe developed from IIT Bombay does is it doesn't even need the network connection to be present while the exam is going on. It allows you to download the paper in an encrypted form. So the paper is downloaded onto your device in an encrypted form, so you cannot see the paper. Only at a particular time when the instructor wants the exam to start, a password is given, a password is announced, and there can once again be a window for the time when you can put in that password. When you put in that password, that exam paper shows up on your device, and then the exam, if it is a 1 hour exam, it stops after 1 hour. And even if you don't have network connection at the end of that 1 hour, it's fine. I mean, it's safely stored, encrypted on your device. Whenever your device can connect next to the network, it uploads it. Okay, and it also provides facilities to do some real-time monitoring, like you would normally do in a proctored exam, where you have invigilators walking up and down the aisles of the exam hall. So SAFE has some facilities to even do that. The instructor can even check what students are doing when they're taking the exam. It also, the device on which the exam is being taken, it automatically prevents that device from accessing anything on the internet other than the safe server. Okay, so basically students cannot just chat with others on whatever, uh, hangouts or Skype or something, or students cannot just type the question in Google and check it up. It blocks that device from accessing anything on the internet other than the safe server. So there are a lot of features that all of these different applications that we are talking about have. uh, at least my personal recommendation would be to try to see if you can install Moodle, and if you can use SAFE for your assessments, uh, or you can even use the Moodle's quiz features for your assessments. There's a very rich set of features for assessments over there. So with that, what I'll do is I will, yeah, maybe let me just quickly, before Bhaskar takes over, let me just quickly point you to some things in the FAQ section about assessments. Uh, right? So how to ensure fairness of online tests, quizzes, exams, and students may do copy pasting. So of course, creating different set of MCQs and randomizing it, even if you have one MCQ, randomizing it, uh, creating slightly open-ended assignments or exams which require student collaboration or group work where, the answers are unlikely to be the same. Uh, Using apps like Safe, where it prevents the students from accessing anything other than the exam on the internet during the duration of the exam. So these are a few things that can be done. Uh, Having said all of that, I think uh, let us also confess that there is absolutely no technique which is completely fail proof. After all, if there is a very serious hacker, if your student is a very serious hacker, he or she may be able to bypass whatever facilities we are trying to build to prevent unfairness in online test quizzes, etc. So there is nothing which is absolutely 100% foolproof, but we can definitely raise the bar. We can make it more and more difficult for students to sort of adopt unfair means by using all of these, right? Some tools to conduct regular quizzes. So I think we have already talked about these. Uh, Providing feedback, this is, I think we have talked about this in several contexts, even for exams. Once a student appears in an exam, uh, and if a student gets an answer wrong, I think it's very important that some feedback goes, and this feedback can be automated. I mean, even Google Forms allows you to provide this. Moodle definitely allows you to provide this. So when a student sees that his or her answer is wrong, they also know why it is wrong and what they could have done. Okay, and so these are the kinds of things that really help students sort of stay engaged with the assessment process, and also feel that even though the medium is online, there is some personal touch to their difficulties, their concerns as they're going through this assessment process. So with that, maybe I'll just check if I'll stop sharing my screen.